To say his life has been a roller coaster is an understatement. He's experienced the highest of the highs in racing and the lowest of the lows in life. But his deeds on the track certainly qualify Greg Hall as being one of Australia's most legendary jockeys.
Greg, 49 Group 1 winners over a stellar career. Sydney, Adelaide, Brisbane and the ultimate, a Melbourne Cup, a Ladbrokes Cox Plate, a couple of Golden Slippers and 5 derbies. An absolutely amazing career, and we're going to talk through a lot of those. But at the height of your career, I want to talk about first is you rode for 2 of the biggest owners in the history of Australian racing in the late Kerry Packer and, of course, Lloyd Williams. How much pressure went with that?
I thrived on pressure, to answer your question. You know, I really did. And the higher the stakes and the higher the risk and the money that they put on was irrelevant to me. And I actually thrived on pressure. And I got that name that he's a big race jockey, and it was just embedded with me, I suppose. You know, I come from a long line of history of a racing family that went for 100 years, and not one day went by where a Hall didn't ride.
Not long after you met Kerry Packer for the first time, and it was with this horse Major Drive that you first formed the association. Lloyd Williams, of course, involved in the horse as well, but you were riding Major Drive in a Sydney Cup. There was a raging hot favourite Mayo card. You were behind the barriers and the race was about to start. Tell us the rest of this story.
I get a phone call. Well, I didn't get a phone call, the starter did. And
at the barriers?
At the barriers. Now, this has never been done in the history of horse racing before or after. And Bill comes up to me, the starter, and Bill said to me, Greg, he said, I just got a phone call from John Schreck, who was nicknamed the Sheriff then.
Chairman of Stewards.
Yep, he said he's going to be watching you the whole race. And me being a bit of a cheeky bugger and all that, I said, oh, that's very kind of him. I said, what about the other 23 runners? And he said, no, he's serious. And I knew Bill was serious. He said, and I've got no idea what this is about, I haven't got a clue, right? I said, well, that's strange, you know. And he said, now be careful. He said, they're going to focus on you the whole race. Now, he gets back last, this horse, because he's got a bit of acid in the rear, and he takes time to wind up. The short story is we topped the rise, and my card's the hot 3-year-old favourite at the time. And so I've got him in my sights as we top the rise, and I give him a few round the backside and get up and beat him by a long neck. And I come back in and I got on the scales to weigh in, and I said, oh, Mr. Schreck, now I've still got no idea what's happened, right? And I said, oh, Mr. Schreck, I said, what was that message behind? And there's cameras everywhere and helicopters and all that stuff, and all the bells and whistles. And I said, what was the phone call for? He said, listen here, Hall. He said, let bygones be bygones, and all's well that ends well. He said, do you understand me, son? I said, crystal. So I left, got in the shower and ended up, then Lloyd says to me, oh, we've got to go to Mr. Packer's tonight. And me being, it's pretty common knowledge that Greg was liked a bit of a nightclub and a bit of a party.
You wanted to get out and celebrate, you got to go see Kerry Packer.
Yeah, and I said, oh, geez, I said, I only met him yesterday and now he's becoming a pest. So, tongue in cheek, and so we get there, and anyway, he walks in with the cup. He said, come with me. He said, I want to go into the office. He said, great ride, son. He said, yeah, terrific ride. Now, these blokes don't sort of really rap people, you know, and it's only the second day I've met him. He said, that was a great ride. He said, but he said, even though I had 7 million on the second horse, you little bastard.
7 million in 1987.
Now, the phone call was about that, obviously, because Major Drive went from 3-1 to 8-1. My card went from even money into 7-2 on, right? But I don't know this. I know nothing about this, right? So then I was having a conversation with Kerry, and I told him the story just like I'm telling you. He said, oh, is that right, son? He said, I'll soon so-and-so fix that up. Well, next minute he rings Jim Bell. Now, Jim Bell's the chairman of the AJC, who overrides John Shrek and the rest of the staff, right? Anyway, Jim Bell comes around and he fills him up full of scotch, and he said, you know those paid servants that you've got working underneath you? He said, I'll get them all sacked. He said, don't be sending messages round to my jockeys or round to my boy round behind the barriers. And he's all going, oh my God, you know, what? Anyway, so I go away I go up to the Brisbane Carnival, right? On the way back, Lloyd rings me, he said, oh look, you've got to ride one at Canterbury on the way home. He said and Kerry was in this horse too, right? And it was a horse called Muffler. I'll never forget it. In those days, you had to have a clearance, right? And you had to take it into the steward's room. And I'm walking in there, and obviously they'd all been told that as soon as Hall walks in here, tell him to come straight in the room. And I said, what's this all about, you know? And he said, sit down. This is John Shrek, right, and the other stewards. And he said, sit down. He said, and I got no idea what this is going to be about, right? He said, you got your clearance? I said, yes, sir. He said, right. He said, we don't care who you know, how much money they got, or how powerful they are. And I've got no clue, right? Mm. And when he said this to me, the pennies dropped. You know what's happened here, Greg? I'm saying to myself, Jim Bell's gone back and give John Shrek a serve about the phone call, right? They said, we'll call you whenever we like. He said to me, do we understand each other, Hall? I said, yes, Mr. Shrek. I said, but I'll say this to you. I said, let bygones be bygones, and all's well that ends well. And he got that angry. He said, get out.
Just kicked you out. A couple of others. We want to chat about the Melbourne Cup and obviously the Ladbrokes Cox Plate as well. But just before we close out on Kerry, of course, you had that, well, somewhat controversial Golden Slipper win on Merlin, of course, where you may or may not have knocked a few down to win the race. But the one I want to talk about is you might have cost Kerry, so to speak, winning on Major Drive. But tell us about Mahogany in the Derby. There's a lovely story there where relating to his betting again. That was in '93, of course, and arguably the greatest horse you ever rode, Mahogany.
Kerry's very big and loud and boisterous, you know. We're in the mounting yard and here's this little jockey in between them, and Kerry's going, what do you think, son? He said, what do you think, Greggy boy? I said, KP, I said, how much, we got made in there, I call him KP, you know, and I said, KP, I said, how much you had on him? He said, I've had 1.6 million on him. Then they said, riders up, and as I walk off, I said, what'd you drop your handbag? I said, go and have a decent bet. I said, this'll win by a minute. Anyway, he went to Lloyd, he said, I like that kid. So he went and had another 3 million on it, and it won by 7 lengths at 9-2.
Oh, well, certainly back in the good books there. Wonderful horse, Mahogany, who gave you so many great moments along the way. Let's move on to Sub-Zero, who gave you the ultimate moment. Winning a Melbourne Cup changes your life, doesn't it?
It does. It's a dream, but dreams normally don't come true, you know.
But everyone knows who you are after that day.
Yeah, they do. You know, I used to dream of it as a kid before I even started riding. That was what I wanted to do, was win a Melbourne Cup. But you wake up in the morning, the cup's not there, you know. But it changes your life. And we got to the front of the 300. And I was talking to him during the race, and I was singing My Way to him, Frank Sinatra, and keeping him relaxed, because you got to get the picture that, you know, these horses are gone from crowds of 4,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 maybe, or now all of a sudden there's 120,000 drunks there, you know, yelling and screaming when you're going out the race to the barriers and all that stuff. And so the main thing...
Well, the people are going to get wound up. Why wouldn't the horses?
Yeah, that's right, because they're not used to that environment. So it's very important that you keep him relaxed as you can from the time you get on him in the mountain yard. When we got to the 300, I've said to myself, I said, now, subby, I said, you might be happy with this. I said, but I'm not real pleased about it, you know? And because that 300 metres is a long way in a Melbourne Cup to the winning post. I just know that anything could come out of the pack and grab it right. And I'm going, I wish that winning post had come in instead of me going there. But he ended up winning by 2 lengths, and he won fair and square, and he beat 2 good horses actually. He beat Vandercross and Castletown, and they were very serious horses. And he was trained to the minute, and I'll give myself a bit of a rap here. It was probably one of my best rides ever.
Then it was only, 5 years later, and you thought, I've done the ultimate, I've won a Melbourne Cup back in 92. 5 years later, you thought, I've done it again. And you're nearly as well known for being beaten in that 1997 Cup as you are for winning it 5 years earlier in some ways. You were on Doremus, the great Might and Power was in front. Tell us about that last 50 metres.
It was an amazing race, and I look back at it, you know, and obviously I was disappointed at the time, but I definitely thought I had him, and even Jimmy Cassidy says, I thought he had me too, and we all know, people that know racing, about the bob of the head, right? And I had him before the post and after the post, but that photo finish line is the width of a cigarette paper, right? And as I went past, Johnny Letts said, yeah, you got it. And naturally, and I don't normally do this, right? Unless I'm pretty much 100% sure, you know? And when I come back, we all know the result. That
how did you feel?
You know, I'm not that happy, but of course I'm not happy, you know. And I walked in there very quiet for me, because I was sort of the life of a party in the jockeys room. And he says, gee, he said, I got you. He said, I got you right on the line. And all the boys have gone silent, you know, the young ones coming through and all that. And so now I'm starting to get a little bit more upset, you know. And he said, yeah, he said, what about that, eh? And I said, I'll tell you something, Jim. And all the boys are going, what's G going to say? I said, you can only drink out of 1 cup, mate, meaning the Melbourne Cup. I said, you can only eat off 1 plate, meaning the Ladbrokes Cox Plate. I said, but you've either got a cold foot or a limp. He said, what are you talking about? I got a cold foot or a limp. I said, well, who goes into a store and buys 1 slipper? He's only got 1 golden slipper. I got 2.
I love it.
And the boys said, see, you should never have went there.
Master of the one-liners always. You mentioned the Ladbrokes Cox Plate. Now, you talk about great races, and that was an epic Melbourne Cup. But that Ladbrokes Cox Plate that you won on Superimpose, arguably the greatest, certainly one of the greatest races we've seen. But incredibly, you had nothing to do with the horse until the day of the race.
Nothing.
You'd never ridden him before.
Well, I was trying to get on Let's Elope, and I did get hold of him once on the phone. I said, oh, Mr. Cummins, I said, can I ride Let's Elope? I'll win on her. He said, do you think so, son? He said, I'll think about it. But he would never give me an answer. And then it was coming to the 11th hour, you know. No word back, and I'm sending letters and leaving messages there, and phone rang, and it was Lee. And he said, have you got a ride in the Cox Plate? And I said, no. He said, well, you can ride Superimpose, right? Now, I've never touched the horse or patted him or anything. I said, do you want me to ride him work in the morning? He said, no. He said, we'll just see you at the races.
Set to go. They stand to attention for the plate. They're off. And Superimpose missed it about 1.5 lengths and away brilliantly here. Kinjate flying from the outside with Coronation Day.
I got round the half-mile turn there, and just a bit of a straight down there, so I started to peel off, and because Let's Elope had, right, and next minute all this carnage happened. These 3 horses come down.
Old Superimpose peeling to the outside with Better Loosen Up. There's a fall. There's a fall in the Cox Plate. And Naturalism's lost the rider. Sinister's out of the race and so's Palace Rain. Rough Habit has been knocked out of it now.
And Jimmy said to me, he said, gee, let me out. I said, mate, I'm in enough trouble myself. I can't help you, you know. But I didn't forget that story in the jockey's room either. And I had him in a real good rhythm, and I was very strong with the whip and never missed a beat with him, you know. And you have to, if you don't do it at the right time, it can change legs or anything like that. And I had her in my sights, and I said, there's one thing you and I are going to do here, Super. We are going to get her. And the rest was history.
Down the outside, Superimpose. Let's Elope in the middle. Prince Salieri getting a run. Better loosen up and Superimpose. Let's Elope in front. Superimpose driving. Super. I think Super and O's to Let's Elope on the Cox Plate.
There will never, ever be a Cox Plate like that ever again.
Greg, a bit about your background, and this is really important in the context of life after your riding career. It was a tough childhood, wasn't it? You were separated from your mum at a very young age.
Yeah, at 2 years of age, I was born in Adelaide, and Dad had drove my brother and sister back, and I'd come back on a plane, and a friend of his picked me up at Essendon Airport. And at 2 years of age, mate, I don't know why, but obviously at 2 years of age, how would I know what happened, you know? Yeah.
So I wanted to outline the childhood because I think it plays to the battles that you had when you retired from racing and how your life went off the rails.
Well, I was brought up with 40 grown men, beautiful men, you know, and a man's world then, you know, and...
but the lack of female influence in your life...
That really damaged me because I had no experience about being a parent or anything like that,
and that's where your marriage to Kim, which was such a building block, a foundation in your life, that's where it all started to go wrong when your marriage broke down.
Yeah, it did. We were with each other since we were 15, and it's the love of my life, and I don't want to get teary about it because I haven't seen my daughter since she's 3 or 4, but now she's 24. But I got my son back in my life. But when the marriage broke down in Dubai, I'd stopped riding too early because it hit me so hard, and exactly what you said. I look back now at it, and what I done was, and it was embedded in me, and I'm not blaming anybody, but it's reality that I put racing in front of everything. I didn't know any different, you know, and as much as I love Kimmy and all that, I look back now and I probably should have spent more time rather than being hooked up in this crazy world of riding for billionaires and casinos and yachts and Learjets.
$10,000 suits and rock star status, rock star lifestyle. But the marriage broke down, you stopped riding, your life just fell to pieces, and all of the frailties that you had took over your life.
Yeah, and I knew the separation was serious, and I come back to Melbourne, and when that hit me and the phone stopped, and especially the separation, I went straight to the bottle. And then it's been nearly 21 years now since I've rode. It just spiraled out of control, and I still had money and houses and all that stuff, but alcohol just took over, and
took everything.
It just took away everything in my life.
Greg, you've got yourself into a good place now. In fact, this is the best I think I've seen you since you did finish riding. But it's a battle every day, and it will be for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Adam. I am in a good place. I'm very contented and happy, but it's a disease that you have for life. It's not curable. The greatest gift I get out of dealing with this disease I've got is to walk onto a race course now, and people look at me and they go, geez, it's good to have you back, G. That's exactly what they say, because they know the difference. They can just see it.
Mate, no better way to finish than that.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.